um, this presentation this evening so that those who are not able to listen live, it will be made available on the project website tomorrow. All the comments and questions being shared through Pigeonhole, the application. We will be able to document those. Our hope this evening is to spend about an hour and a half with you all, up to an hour and a half. We have a brief presentation. I shouldn't say brief, it is a presentation. We've covered a lot this week. And then we will open up the opportunity for Q&A. And as I mentioned, we're going to be using the pigeonhole.at application for Q&A this evening, as we're anticipating a large group of people who are going to join the presentation. So without further ado, I'm going to begin. I would like to introduce myself. My name is Andrew Core. I'm the project manager with Pond and Company. We are partnered with MXD Development Strategists, and this is our team who's been working on the design charrette this week. And we've been working for 4 days, coming and crafting up with ideas and having a lot of fun doing so. And we've been, it's been a very interactive process, especially with the technical advisory committee members and city staff. So I want to thank them to begin with, all of those who participated, including elected officials, city staff, and the TAC stakeholder members. Your participations helped made this a better project and a better process for the design charrette. As I've told people during the week, we really wish we could have done this in person, because it is just a lot more interactive in person, exchanging ideas and testing ideas, and people can see and touch the concepts we're creating. So we're doing the best we can to augment that and using this virtual forum. As I mentioned before, this presentation will be made available, as is the recording of this video. So if you want to see more information, or you have a colleague, a friend, or a spouse or partner who could not able to attend this evening, they will be able to listen and view the presentation a little bit later. So this was our virtual design charrette schedule. A design charrette is an interactive workshop where the design team and the planning team engages the stakeholders and the public. And we're working on things in real time. So we're crafting and creating ideas in a more condensed format. We do this so we can generate big ideas, test big ideas, change things in real time, and modify things more quickly, and advanced ideas. It also is a process, especially in person, allows people to see in a transparent format how we as the planning team are thinking, and allows us to engage the public. So we've done the best we can this week with these virtual forums talking about these different topics. And each night, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, we've actually presented our ideas, what we've done today, to the technical advisory committee members. So this evening, the public's getting to see kind of what we've done during the week. We've accomplished a lot during the week. I'm going to cover a lot of information. So I encourage you to download the presentation later on. But I want to begin with this idea of kind of where we are in the process. Again, we are right here in March working with the design charrette. And then after that, we are really looking at working towards the end of May to come back to the public as we refine these ideas over a couple of months and present our refined ideas. And we'll be able then to continue using the project website to engage the public and provide people information and updates. So this is where we are. We're kind of in the middle of the project, but we're continuing to move forward and advance the project. So this is our agenda this evening. We're going to begin with an overview of the project, kind of what a master plan is and isn't, and what we've been doing this week. We're going then to present the design principles and vision. We're going to talk about the study area, the overview of it, and then move into major themes. Major themes being open space and connectivity, transportation and mobility, and then development scenarios. And what you're going to see are initial ideas. I will say this over and over. What you're seeing is one possible option, several possible options. The final plan and the final development build out scenario over 20 years may look very different, but this helps set the framework. Finally, we will do a Q&A, and then I will briefly mention prior to everyone leaving kind of our next steps and what you can expect. So we begin with the overview. As I mentioned, for those who are the general public who are listening in this evening, this is our method for you to provide comments and questions. You go to pigeonhole.at on your smartphone or your computer if you're at a desktop. You can use the QR code on the screen that will take you to the correct session. And then if it asks for a password, you simply type in JCTC5. So pigeonhole.at, enter the passcode JCTC5, and you'll be taken into a general Q&A session where as you're listening, you may be able to post comments and questions, and we will post those live during the Q&A, at which point you can kind of vote up or down if you want to hear more questions and you like comments. That'll be our way to engage you this evening. And I will have one of my colleagues actually put that in the chat box so you're aware of that if you don't remember later on. So first I want to set the tone for what a master plan is and what we're trying to achieve as part of this project. The master plan is a framework document to help the city proactively plan for future development. This is a large site. It is 192 acres. There's a lot of things to plan in this space. Secondly, this is an opportunity to engage with you, the public, and help create something that will truly represent Johns Creek. We want to make this distinctive for Johns Creek. Thirdly, this is a method, the master plan is a method to identify catalyst projects and to begin thinking how to distinguish the town center from other communities regionally. So this is very important that we're thinking big picture. We want to make something that is truly remarkable for the city of Johns Creek. Finally, and I want to stress this over and over, everything you see is couched in an idea that it is a 20-year vision for the town center. What we present is not happening overnight. It's a framework document. It's going to take years to build out what you see, but the steps must begin tonight, this evening, with this process moving forward and helping set the stage for what we want to do in the future. The master plan is not a detailed site design effort, not a series of construction documents or detailed site designs. It's a method to test ideas at a higher level. Those detailed site design efforts and planning efforts come later. The master plan is not a zoning or other regulatory document. However, we will recommend new policies and programs as part of the master plan to advance the implementation of the overall city center plan. And the master plan is not a singular vision for the town center. It must remain flexible to account for the changing market conditions, new technologies, and changing demographics. So what we see needs to be flexible and change over time, but we want to have enough information available for city staff and city government so they can move forward with implementation. So what this week is all about. It's about getting excited about the future. It's about thinking outside the box. As I mentioned, it's about testing ideas in real time, about strategizing on big themes, and being loose and not rigid so the best ideas are explored. So we're thinking in that level, and then we'll continue to refine that. As I mentioned, this is not the end of the project. We're refining these ideas going forward. Just a couple of examples from our Charrette studio space in our office. Different ideas and concepts, as you can see. There's a lot of ideas. We put pen to paper. We test concepts. It's messy. It's fun. And it's very iterative. And I think the TAC members and the city staff can attest to that. We've advanced things and tried different ideas and made things on the fly very quickly this week to constantly tweak, and we're not done. So what you see is a work in progress. So the first thing we did this week is create a series of design principles and vision. We've proposed this vision for Johns Creek Town Center, that it is an iconic destination that represents the city's diversity, culture, and values. As both a gateway and a connector, the town center incorporates a series of experiences that appeal to a variety of audiences and age groups. This inclusive and remarkable place is defined by a series of neighborhoods connected via natural resources and greenways that is synonymous with wellness and sustainable living. So this proposed vision was taken from ideas from interviews we had with stakeholders, from public comments using the Social Pinpoint website, and looking at physical characteristics of the website to create this broad vision. It's aspirational, what we want to see in 20 years and what we want to see happen over time. The outgrowth of that are a series of design principles. So the goal is, as we come up with ideas and concepts, we want to make sure that the ideas and concepts align with these design principles. The first one being is that town center's identity focuses on a clear connection between arts, culture, wellness, sustainability, and innovation. And beneath that come all the land uses that make a vibrant town center: office, residential, commercial, light industrial, innovation, thinking about wellness, as we mentioned there, thinking about sustainability and best practices in building and design. All those are couched in this idea. Second design principle is that proposed redevelopment will consider a phased approach over a 20-year horizon, which considers the size of the study area. Now, what we are presenting tonight does not show any phasing. However, we will be working towards that. As I mentioned, we are looking for catalyst projects and how this might want to happen over time. So it's not going to happen overnight. All 192 acres are not going to be redeveloped in one single phase. It will take time to develop and grow over a long period of time, but we want to start today. The third design principle: mobility and connectivity opportunities create safe connections for multiple users within the town center and to nearby amenities, neighborhoods, and job centers. So whether you're biking, walking, taking Uber, taking Lyft, driving, it represents this multiple connectivity options. A thing we've heard over and over, and we want to stress in the design principles, is that the water features, specifically the two ponds and the tributary which form the ponds within the town center, should be used as a distinguishing element to make this a distinctive place. This is something that other town centers in the region and elsewhere do not have. So we want to take advantage of the resources provided. The fifth design principle: Johns Creek Town Center needs to serve as both a gateway into the community and an accessible destination for residents and visitors elsewhere. So it has multiple functions with its location. So some major themes. We talked about some key ideas here. We began with this idea of potential gateways at a very high level. So you see the map on the left, and what we began doing is saying, you look at these major concepts in and around the map. As you begin looking at your transportation network and its potential build out, there are a lot of opportunities here. What we're showing here on the right are some big picture ideas to capture people's attention and create this as an identifiable place, as both a gateway and a distinctive destination. There's lots of different things you can do at these different moments where people have opportunities to see in, to engage the site, to draw people in, whether you're taking like an Eichelman beautiful sculpture, something that's linear and lit at night, like the Denver International Airport, or really a symphony of fountains like you see in Kansas City and elsewhere that take place and draw you in. These are things that are really iconic and need to really represent the community. If you remember from the first design principle, we came up with these 5 themes that we heard over and over coming through from the public input. The idea of arts, culture, wellness, sustainability, and innovation. So in each of these, we've begun to find ideas and concepts that we can implement in this town center. As an example, in this middle area here, under arts, an immersive design experience. Imagine that over a multi-use trail or urban plaza in the new town center. We've talked a lot about different cultures and the way they do food and markets. So this idea of a year-round amazing concept for not just a farmer's market on Saturday, but a year-round regional destination. This could be something amazing and distinctive that other communities do not have regionally. The idea of wellness. This town center is literally next door to Emory Healthcare. How do we engage those individuals? How do we engage Emory, bring it in and link those two, but promote wellness as a community? And that appeals to many people. Sustainability and this idea of a biophilic city where we connect both people and nature in a unique place is something that draws inspiration, and it's done elsewhere, but it can be taken to the next level. And that's directly linked to the idea of innovation, right? This idea that we need to be forward thinking about our architecture, forward thinking how we are going to do business in the future, forward thinking about our public spaces, forward thinking about our building and our build out, forward thinking about our stormwater management. These are all things that will help us innovate in the long term. And we have to be thinking this way because this is a 20-year vision. So we next began with this idea of open space zones after we began the culture, so open space zones. We began wanting to categorize open space thematically because there's lots of different entities out here. And this is very high level, but we ended up coming up with 4 distinctive open space zones. One being water restoration. Not surprisingly, this is built around the ponds and the stream area here. We have these areas called community commons, where the community can gather in a plaza and bring people together in active play and people engaging the public. This is happening here in and around Johns Creek, down the City Hall. This is happening around the tunnel that you come under Medlock Bridge, and linking these connectivity options to the stream. At the northwest corner has a great opportunity. Again, high level, but these are opportunities that are rising to the surface as potential great places to bring the community out and engage them. One of our big ideas is a linear park to better use and reuse the space along Johns Creek Parkway. Today, it's not designed well. It's designed as a parkway, lots of open space. It's also unused. High-speed traffic fly through the area. It's not conducive to pedestrians, bicyclists, or users in that park space. So our feeling is we could redesign within the public right-of-way, Johns Creek Parkway, and better organize the open space, creating a really special space over time. And then you have different components of, I would say in general, kind of forested areas. What their ecological value is still to be determined, but there's areas along the stream here, especially where it gets very deep topographically, and adjacent to the stream, and areas in the backside of State Farm that are still wooded, and we need to understand what's the reality of the ecology of those sites and how can they best be preserved and managed. These open space zones are one tool to help us establish the framework for how the site can be better used. So what you're seeing on the screen here, when you look at all these buildings too, I want to remind people are the existing buildings that are out there today. So we took these open space zones and we began identifying key potential elements and items. And these are just a few. When you're talking about water restoration, how can we make it a place of play, bringing people closer to the pond's edge and making it a community space? How can we restore some of the ecology of the area, the streams, especially north of the northernmost pond, and really activate those spaces and really make it a learning opportunity? With the community commons, where are the spaces we can create where we can bring people out, sitting next to cafes, enjoying their friends, playing cornhole, pop-up activities, enjoying art, having a programmed space for outdoor activities. In the linear park, you can have both amazing open space opportunities, but the opportunity for a dog park, an organized space for a dog park, or an organized space for play, a true play for all ages, like you see here, that's represented in Maggie Daley Park in Chicago, or conservation open space, where, these areas that are forested or areas even in Linear Park, how do we maintain them, preserve them, but give people greater access to nature and be sensitive to what we have out there in the natural environment? So there's all these different tools and activities that can be done and strategies to really make these open spaces really an advantage and a great return on investment for the community. Out of this, we created an open space transect, and this infographic is really here to illustrate how the different types of open spaces relate to one another, whether it's water restoration, more of a developed setting with community, or a linear park that's thinking better about use of open space, or simply conserving the open space that we have in those forested areas. So we took this idea and we added another level, kind of building a story from the existing conditions and themes and gateways up to the open space and parks. We added another layer, this idea of the street grid, or designing a walkable community town center with a clear hierarchy of roads and spaces. So what you're seeing on the screen are a series of major roads. Here is Johns Creek Parkway, Lakefield Drive, our major highways with Medlock Bridge and McGinnis Ferry, and then the introduction of possible new and local roads, or the idea of improving the grid space up here in the northwest corner and really accentuating that, and thinking about new connections and maybe dividing up the State Farm parcel, making more options here. This creates redundancy in the network, gives people more options as they're traveling in and around through the space, and makes it more manageable from a traffic operations standpoint, but also opens up walkable neighborhoods that open up huge possibilities for diversity and what happens in them. So let's talk a little bit about these. We have these streetscape typologies. You have these major highways. You have these what we call main streets, right? The major thoroughfares through the area. A couple of options of shared streets, and we actually refined this earlier. Some locations of shared streets, and then even local streets later on that connect people. Let's talk a little bit about each of these for a moment. So on the screen over to your left, you see this kind of major road. This is Main Street 1. And our idea here is to say, on the northern end, we maybe consolidate right now a 4-lane Johns Creek Parkway to a 3-lane road with a center turn lane. And then on the southern end, do the same thing, but do it on the eastern end, the northbound lane. So you're consolidating the traffic patterns versus splitting them up with a huge buffer. By doing that, you then consolidate, as you can see below, instead of having a roadway with very wide buffer and very little activity in the middle, you can actually consolidate the roadway, introduce a very active multi-use path, introduce a linear park, and conserve and enhance a lot of open space that currently is not really used well. This also creates front doors for potential development sites like State Farm and other places, and these office parcels here. So an innovative idea that's really working within the right-of-way and just using the existing public right-of-way in a better way. And now this creates a parallel opportunity, in addition to a great main street, to parallel what's happening with the stream. That's an idea of some main streets through here as well. The idea of what you're doing on the main streets. You're going kind of some of these roads are simply 2-lane roads. They have very narrow sidewalks, limited buffers. You run on the backside of the road. The same can be true for even McGinnis Ferry. No one wants to walk down McGinnis Ferry. It's not comfortable. There's no buffers. It feels unsafe. Here's what we're trying to propose is as we retrofit these roads or add new road extensions, let's make the road more valuable, introducing on-street parking to support businesses, and establishing buffers for shade and trees and wider sidewalks. So you don't have to walk a single file, but you can walk next to your spouse or your friend as you're taking a walk and you're leisurely walking and looking at retail. This then activates the space behind here, behind the street, within the private right-of-way, to encourage redevelopment potential. We also have these ideas of local streets. We have some local street opportunities in here as well. They may not be as major, but you may still be able to find some on-street, maybe some on-street parking. It's typically 2-lane roads. You might find them in more residential areas as well. So that is also an option. And we also have these ideas of shared streets as well. These are not entirely all shared streets. What we were trying to highlight in certain segments, this is an incorrect map, but there's a couple of different locations in and around Johns Creek that you can take a block or two and take a typical roadway like you see with maybe on-street parking and its roadway, actually turn to a shared street like you see on the right-hand side. Something that can be closed down during the day. It's a place where community spaces can gather and really activate the space in this corridor. So just a new idea, but it's innovative and it lets us rethink how we do shared spaces and shared roadways. So what we began doing after that is experimenting, as the TAC members know, with different areas of this entire area. I will show you that momentarily. But this is the entire 192 acres. And these are very possible uses. As I mentioned, we began just kind of looking at building out the street grid network and adding in kind of different potential uses. These can be mixed and matched. I just want to be clear with that. But this gives you some, it gives you some form to think how you can conceptually think about the different uses in and around here. Again, whether it's civic uses, for instance, and we'll talk in more detail momentarily, in and around here, around City Hall and other places. The places of wellness, like the existing Lifetime Fitness or maybe a new a wellness center. You have mixed use. There's maybe more 3 to 4 stories where you have residential on top of retail, or maybe smaller, more village style residential, where it's or community residential, where it's on top of commercial 1 stories. You have shop fronts, which strengthens the edge along Medlock Bridge and McGinnis Ferry. And the idea of office is kind of thought about in this space as well. More office space intermingled through here as well. I mean, there's a whole potential to mix and match these ideas. It's a first snapshot. When you look at this, what I want you to be seeing is there is now some structure to this and a more efficient use of development than what currently exists. You can even begin seeing trail networks and connectivity through the dashed lines. So you're connecting different communities and creating a really connected open space network of linear parks and streams and buffers. Again, a first idea, that's why we say it's possible use. When I look at that, what I see is I see structure forming, right? And when you see this, you should say this structure can be flexible. And so over time, as it responds to market conditions, and we're going to continue looking at this and refining this. As I mentioned, during the course of the week, we began this process by kind of chunking out these different areas, looking at the civic core area here first at a more granular level. And then this area what we're calling Creekside, which we think has a really great branding opportunity. Really think about this as the Creekside Town Center. This idea of the Medlock McGinnis Corner. You know, this is the gateway not only into Johns Creek, but into an entirely new county. Huge opportunity to draw people from Forsyth County and market potential from Forsyth County. And then the State Farm area, right? Kind of a campus in of itself. But how can we better link those two together? So we begin, like I said, large scale, looking at the grid, the open space, the natural resources, and then begin building out a framework. So we're going to go through each of these now individually, beginning with number 1, which is the civic core. So as you can see, this is kind of our sketch where we began kind of sketching out our ideas here with the civic core originally. We played around with a lot of different ideas. As the TAC members can attest, we modified this during the week and sketched out a couple of different alternatives. But a couple of things we are looking at, I want to point out that could be really cool and really key to this. Number 1 is this idea of play. The civic area here, this is City Hall, currently parking lots. Our thought is to make a strong central core here of open space and then redevelopment that actually looks out onto the open space, okay? This idea that you can begin introducing iconic art at gateways and entertainment maybe possibly further down as you begin thinking about retrofitting these buildings and new arts, food and beverage opportunities for maybe a brewery or distillery, high-end dining. These are things that currently don't exist here, but are real draw down here further in Creekside that we'll talk about momentarily. And, there's opportunities for roundabouts and consistent themes, but don't just do a roundabout, doing a roundabout with public art and really amazing opportunities. So we began playing with this idea of the civic core, a community common space where people can engage one another and come out. And as part of that, we began testing other ideas. Well, what about, how do we begin thinking about farmers markets? How does that initiate? What does that look like? Could it be here? Could it be further down the way? How do we link the farmers market concept to the food and beverage and kind of an urban ag idea to the food and beverage long term? That could be really innovative and not really done too much around here. Maybe over time, this area over here redevelops with different parts of residential. Maybe it warrants a new community center and kind of as a central space rather than a current office building. That might be a new use somewhere in around here. New residential communities with, high quality development and a diverse group of residential styles. And then, storefronts in and around these commercial opportunities. And the storefronts are critical because they need to be very much linked to streetscapes and thinking about that. They need to be very permeable, so it's walkable. People can sit outside and connect. So one of the things we began doing is we took this idea over here, this corner of kind of Civic Commons area, and said, some people were asking, okay, what does this look like in real life? Are we just drawing lines on a map, or what does this feel like in 3D? So here's an example of one. This is the major road through here. Imagine this being really looking at a Lakefield Drive through here now, but a Lakefield Drive that has sidewalks, wide sidewalks, buffer streets, street trees. Here's maybe a shared street concept through the heart of it that can be had. With areas with parking both on street and in back. And also look, this is kind of what it feels like to have a 2-story and a 3-story commercial building here in this space. So there's a lot of opportunities here in this space specifically. So again, we use this image here, not because this is exactly how it's going to get built out, but because what you're seeing on the map here is very implementable. We literally took what was drawn and we're showing this in real time to kind of match the scale and form, and that the line on the map that you see as a road is in fact a real road that represents street trees and buffers and things of that nature. So it's very transferable. Now, will it look like this when we're done? Maybe, maybe not. Obviously, these are just massings. There's no architectural form. It's really there just to represent a diagram, but it's very represents spatial concepts. And so this is really what we're trying to share here, is what this might look like over time and what it might look and feel like if you're in the town center. So the next comment, I think, will be really exciting to see. We said, well, this community commons space that really links and creates a grand vista for City Hall. We said, well, what does that look like? Because in plan view, it looks like 3 open spaces, right? Well, we did this for fun today. We built this out yesterday evening and this morning, just as an example. Things I want to point out. Only the massing here. This is not really, but this represents what we've kind of drawn in here. So now this becomes a place where you have storefronts opening up, a place to linger longer, to have entertainment. We thought this idea to continue this theme of, this area along Johns Creek actually drains as a watershed down to the ponds. So wouldn't it be great to kind of mimic that flow of water using this pathway through here with open water themes, kind of ponds, spaces for kind of stage areas, different elevations that all link down towards your city hall in the distance, with a shared street concept where people can linger and move freely through, outdoor patio seating for restaurants and bars. This can be a vibrant space long-term. And remember, what you're looking at is public space. And one of the things we point this out and the reason we focused on civic core so much this week is this is publicly owned land. You know, what can the city do to catalyze future development over time? Again, this isn't going to be overnight, but this could be a vision 5, 10 years from now. This is what the space you're experiencing and how it gets redeveloped over time. So these buildings, you know, incorporate covered parking. You know, no longer do you may have some on-street parking, but you now have covered parking wrapped around with retail. You have maybe potentially a performing arts theater in the back here with a community civic center. These are all things that are massed out to represent that scale, that what could potentially happen here. Very cool ideas, very high level, but we wanted everyone to experience the space and the potential. But again, this represents what we've been drawing this week, that it is in fact very real. And then we began saying, as a build on of that, what happens in these spaces? And there's so many potentials, right? We believe there's a strong opportunity to connect the ponds to the back of City Hall as a starting point. What a great catalyst project, right? And linking the ponds and City Hall. But how do we bring people closer to the ponds? You know, floating decks, allow them to move around and really engage the ponds better. A really cool immersive experience here could happen. Imagine out here that you even have maybe a deck where a symphony is playing for a concert and you're sitting over here in the amphitheater. Or what if this becomes the performing arts center potentially long term that has this iconic entrance and gateway into the space? Or even a great mixed use feel that creates this great connection here. These are all things that can be happened, but they need to be planned over time so you can take advantage of the natural assets and your public assets, which is really important. So many opportunities to kind of connect to different components of this. The next items, you're not going to get any 3D renderings yet. We're still in the process of playing with those ideas, but we took this to the next level of this kind of creekside concept, which is here's City Hall where my mouse is. This is looking, you know, so the north is up. This is a Medlock Bridge. Sorry, I went blank there. Medlock Bridge here. Johns Creek Parkway here. Lakefield here. So this area, and this is really conceptually, this is not what the ponds look like. I know this is kind of blue color on here, but the pond is really more here. Okay, not all the way up here. This is this kind of artist coloring. But this is, you know, you think about this for a moment, this creekside concept all along through here. What could this be? Look over here to the right. This could be a great, amazing space where you have food and beverage, linking, you know, amazing spaces for outdoor activities along the creek, just like this space is here. Opportunities for flexible scenic walkways and pathways entirely around the creek. And I use this option too. This is from the High Line, New York, and obviously we're not doing the High Line here, but whatever we do, and even if it's in the finest of details, in the benches you do, and the trash receptacles you select, and the pavilions you build need to represent Johns Creek. They need to be uniquely Johns Creek. So I think that is really important to keep in mind. We transferred up to Medlock and McGinnis Ferry. Key things to point out here. This corner, there's already an existing grid that was established when this was originally developed. Let's continue thinking this out. This is an immersive art experience in here. So this is actually the tunnel under Medlock right now. It's a great space, but it kind of leads to a very unexciting pathway, but could potentially lead all the way back past the existing hotels, which are seen still here, existing, to the creek. And you could introduce along the space, nature walk down along the creek. You could do immersive art in this space here along the pathways. This creates a lot of interest because now you have people who have office here, you have hospitality, you have restaurants. Wow, this is really interesting. Now people can come across the way and really have an engaging experience. And they're coming over here to spend more time and spending time along the creek and visiting more space. So this will take place over time to be sure. We think there's a lot of synergy with this idea of Emory Healthcare, Johns Creek next door, opposite Medlock Bridge right over here. There's a need for an expansion of wellness. There's a great concept for town center to be a center of wellness. We use this existing building as an opportunity. Could this be retrofitted long-term? Do you build a new building? Is this even the location for wellness center? Possibly. But wouldn't it be great to have a wellness center over here, 20 to 25,000 square feet along the riverfront, which then spurs other development opportunities for other medical office, other medical research opportunities to link to wellness. Oh, and by the way, it's on a creek along a trail network that promotes further health and wellness. So a lot of synergy there. And then here on the east side, this linear park mimics the hydrology of the site here. But this is that linear park that rethought Johns Creek Parkway. And now there's this idea of a great greenway. And a greenway designed for all users. Greenway designed for people maybe, people who are walking, who are jogging, who are bike riding. So it really is both leisure and as transportation. And of course, I know people are asking, are we thinking about what happens? How do you get to Johns Creek with a greenway and trail to the town center? Absolutely. That's something we're still working on with city staff and how we connect externally to the site, but we have some ideas we're still playing with. So that's certainly a part of the conversation. And finally, the State Farm placemaking concept. Again, this is the State Farm campus. Lots of very cool things you can do in here. But again, State Farm may be over time a flexible space that returns back to office. Maybe it's an innovation hub and it's focusing on, it's treated as a campus. Introducing different types of residential in and around here. People who are younger, first jobs, coming to be startups, coming to work in this campus. They have great amenities nearby here with the greenways and open space, a great place to live and work, and also uses like grocery stores and small restaurants and office and goods and services along McGinnis Ferry. So you're really creating a value capture for State Farm over time. There's the opportunity to even introduce hotel concepts, which we've talked about some. Could this State Farm building potentially be a new higher end for hotel, like a Hotel Indigo brand or a loft that renovate these existing office buildings? That could be something as well. But we really need more flexible outdoor co-working space. We don't know what COVID looks like in the future, what happens as we come out of COVID, but it's going to at least generate questions about how we do office and living in the future. And so there's a lot of opportunity for that as well. Okay, I have just thrown a lot of things at you in about a 45-minute time span. I want to thank you all for letting me speak so much. There's so much we wanted to give you this evening, and we're sorry the sketches that showed up, the actual kind of computer-aided designs are actually in there. We'll make sure you put those in there before you post online. But we threw a lot at you right now. We hope you were taking notes and asking questions in the Pigeonhole app. But what we're going to do now is kind of go to those questions, an opportunity for you to ask questions and to engage with the questions being asked. So I'm going to go to the next slide here. And we see some votes already popping up, which is great. So we're going to take a moment. I'm just going to give everyone a moment to see on the screen the questions being asked. Some of the comments. If you can go to the Pigeonhole app, if you see a comment you like, vote for it. If you have another one you want to vote, put it in there. Go ahead and ask. And we'll take a moment as you guys begin posting comments. And again, the ask your questions, the website is at the top of the screen, pigeonhole.at. If asked for a passcode JCTC5, and we'll wait just a moment as questions are being asked. I'm going to go ahead and begin because this one had a lot of popularity and it's a statement. But I'm going to start with that one and just kind of honor that statement and say, absolutely. People have said this over and over. We heard it on Social Pinpoint on the website and the interactive map activity. We've heard it from the TAC members. That's why we're really talking about the diversity concept. and really celebrating that with the different cultures and concepts within and around the town center. This goes to art, how you incorporate art and culture and performance art, fine art, and immersive art experiences. This goes to food and beverage and being inclusive in that space. It's going to even thinking about how we design our spaces. We talk about the food hall. We don't have, food halls from other parts of the world don't really exist in the way we think here. They're kind of having a standard stall, food products, all diversity. We have some of that, but we don't have that really to the where we could take it in very few places. So there are certain cities around that have those ideas. Let's take that to the next level. So we're playing with these bigger ideas that celebrate all different types of diversity. And so I just want to say yes, being inclusive is a great concept, and we're trying to be responsive to that within the town center plan. Great question about a performance center. And so I think if I think we are talking about is performing arts, and if that isn't the case, yeah, we've been talking a lot about performing arts and how that might fit in. We've talked about it being, there could be a lot of different places. But I'll say number one, is it adjacent to City Hall? That could be a location kind of overlooking the waterfront. Is it opposite City Hall? So it frames City Hall with a view shed, and it creates a great iconic building on Medlock Bridge. That's an option. Is it a series of smaller facilities in and around town center? That's an option. But it needs to have not just a building, but it needs to be connected to the surrounding site and street and public art. So we agree with that, and we're considering how that might best fit long term, so that the city and those who are advancing those ideas have a space for it. Oh, this question always gets asked so many times. What's the timeline? So really, we always talk about 10 to 20 years. That it's going to take a lot of different steps to it. And not only is it we're just going to start building a core tomorrow, it's going to be an iterative process where you're doing something small. So where we show that center beautiful core looking down to town hall, that may begin with an initiative to do food trucks and bring in different vendors, then spurs to a public-private partnership for redevelopment, that spurs to more and more activity and new development. So it's going to be, we want it to begin soon, but that means the city taking initiatives and beginning to proactively plan. This specific timeline, we're hoping to be done by the end of summer, mid to end of summer, so that the city can adopt it and move forward with the initiatives. But I know they're actively thinking about how to move ahead. So it's the beginning timeline, we hope to begin as soon as we can. What those initial steps are to begin, that's still to be determined. When I talk about catalyst sites and catalyst initiatives, what we're going to help define the plan are what are those 3 or 4 big moves that the city can do as a city, as municipal government, to advance the project forward. And what can the city do to partner with other entities and property owners to advance the project forward, so they can move on multiple levels. So we'll take some time on that. Yeah, so there's a number of different I think subdivisions kind of definitely to the east of Tech Park and things like that. We were careful to consider that. The more we're actually introducing more streets that creates more opportunities to move around. And we're thinking anytime you do something like this, you want to begin considering long-term impacts. So there's going to be additional studies and impacts to be done to look at how that works, because we want to respect the existing technology park entities and how they move in and out of the space. When we talk about residential subdivisions, yes, we want to increase connectivity so that too as well. So you don't have one way in, one way out. You have multiple options. It helps disperse traffic flow versus concentrating it. Those are things we're thinking about. And obviously, we're never going to solve the McGinnis Ferry Medlock Bridge traffic. I mean, this wasn't part of the scope of the project. It's always going to be a heavily traffic corridor in both directions. But what we can do is give more options in and around town center. So you don't have the situation what you do now is people who get on Johns Creek Parkway, and especially in a pandemic when there's no one around, just fly down Johns Creek Parkway. Can that be monitored and improved? Absolutely. That's part of the road. You can design the road better so it functions better as well, and it gives people more opportunities to move around. So we want to actually give people more options to move, make it more mobile, so you're not always having to get in your car too as well. Great comment. And yes, as I mentioned before, we were thinking about that. I think it all depends on kind of, what subdivisions want to be connected. How do we best do that? But long-term connectivity is absolutely essential. We think there are absolutely critical paths to the west, specifically under Medlock Bridge. We think there are ways to get to the Bell Road connector and the trails to Rogers Bridge. I think that's a longer term kind of a regional connection. There's also those the subdivision connections over time. And what I can tell you is it does take place over time. As the town center builds out and the subdivisions want to have more access, it's a great partnership between those individual HOAs and subdivisions and partnerships with the city to open up and make those opportunities connect. So we're thinking about that. It will take time though. Oh, sorry, I need to answer to that. Great question about this. We've actually already initiated engagement with the commercial and retail property owners. Already that began the Business Association. We began that in December last year. So the city staff working in partnership with has been keeping them abreast of the situation. So we've done a number of different interviews with individual property owners and commercial owners. We reached out to a lot of them. And we're actually going to be hosting another forum for commercial and retail property owners to summarize what we've presented to the public and the TAC in this past month or so in a couple of weeks. So we're trying to find ways to invite them in because they ultimately are partners. And we want them to participate in the process. And so we're working closely with our partners at the city to make sure that retail and commercial property owners know what's going on. But we've already begun engaging them last year and continue that into this year as well. So the process prioritization is kind of multifaceted. One is we really need to hear from the public kind of what those big moves are. What do you like? What do you not like? Those especially happen when we talk about kind of what can the city do kind of in the public realm to kind of advance things, and also looking about what are the big initiatives the public wants to move forward. There's also the idea of like what wants to happen. So there's some things that are low-hanging fruit that can be catalyst projects. So we'll be able to present those to you all and test those ideas. Some of it's availability, some of it's cost. There's a number of different ways to do that. Often what I tell people too is, look, we have a series of design principles that I presented to them. So use those as a way to gauge project success, like and testing project ideas. So you might come up with a great idea and then compare it to those design principles and say, well, does it meet this criteria? And if we say, yeah, it hits 4 or 5 of those criteria that I presented, then that makes a great opportunity and kind of helps bring things to the top. There are other things that are great ideas, but may not be as warranted. And then you also have to remember it needs to be flexible. So there are things that at this time, when we complete the plan, that the public and the city and the TAC have said, these are high priorities. And over time, they become lesser priorities because things change. Technology changes. Maybe a new property owner comes in, a new developer comes, and other priorities shift in and around geographically. So these are things that happen. And so the plan needs to be flexible. That's why I like those design principles, because they kind of maintain consistency over time. You can test ideas. Well, this is a great question, and I know Ben, I can answer this to my degree what's going to be happening, but I don't know if you want to chime in as well. I want to make sure I'm speaking appropriately about the process. We are asking, our goal is to get the master plan adopted, but then there will be obviously another series of next steps following the master plan to continue the initiative forward. So Ben, I don't know if you want to speak to that any further beyond what I just said.
Well, no, I was just going to say, you hit it on the head in terms of what the action is going to be from council would be for us. And again, I'll just say this, as much as we're keeping the public in the loop, as well as the Town Center Advisory Committee, so is the City Council. We have 3 council liaisons that are that sit as part of the committee as well. We're reviewing every step of this process. But yes, ultimately is to adopt the master plan, but then the next steps after that would be reiteration of, again, going through the process of attacking those plans that we could take care of. Again, much easier to say of those properties that are on that we own as a city, but also potentially looking into at larger or more defined plans at specific areas, targeted areas, taking our cues and the framework from the master plan itself.
Great, thank you, Ben. I think that makes sense. Like it's an ongoing process. It doesn't stop here. It's going to be kind of the guiding document, but other things will happen. So, good question. Thank you. Oh, sorry. I didn't mean to not answer that. My apologies. I hit the wrong button. But I want to say is, yeah, our intention is to connect all the way to Collier Creek Park. I mean, one option is the Rogers Bridge trailhead, the connector trail on Bell Road. I think it makes a lot of sense to find a way to get to Bell Road and then connect that directly to Rogers Bridge trailhead, which takes you in. But there's another to get to the river, but there's a couple of other opportunities as well. So we're absolutely thinking about that. Because if you get to Collier Creek Park, that gets you to the river. Then you can get up to Rogers Bridge as well. And then that takes you into ultimately into Duluth. And so that begins that conversation about connecting it between different communities. And that's a game changer there. So this is a comment about the city government considered discussion with Technical College to look at repurposing State Farm. So I know that there's, it's private, I think it's private properties, and I think State Farm is always looking for redevelopment opportunities. I don't know, Ben, this is more of a city government conversation, but I think the properties are looking at a lot of different ways to repurpose that site that makes sense for them.
Yeah, I mean, from the standpoint of the city, we continue talks with State Farm just to see and also to get their input and feedback as we progress through this process. Obviously, we're looking at many different options that may be available to them, and we'll be sharing more about the different programming options that may be available.
Great, thank you. I can do a quick, I'm not sure, I'm going to ask before I go to this one, if Jonathan, if you're on, if you can do a quick measurement, that I think referring to community centers, that community commons green space, that kind of area, not including the development on the other side. So if you can take a look at that, that'd be great, real quick, Jonathan. And I'm going to go ahead and answer this one. And Andrew Fain, I may rely on you, but kind of the development model looked at, we presented, had a development model vision, I believe, in the moderate development range over 20 years, was I think 700 quote units, and
yeah,
a little bit more.
Yeah, that's yeah, from the market-based program, we're looking at about 700 residential units, give or take. Obviously, there's probably more land available, possibly after that 20-year timeline, or if things accelerate and are really great, maybe there are more residential units. But, based just purely on our numbers right now of 700 units, if you think, 2 to 2.3, residents per unit, which is typical, moving forward, you're looking at maybe what 1,400 to 1,600 new residents in the town center over a 20-year period. So that's over a lengthier period of time, but
Right.
that's a ballpark number of generally, I'd say in the 1,400 to 1,600 range for number of residents.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm going to come back to that comment. I think this is talking about that. So when we talk about light industrial, this is a comment that came up. I don't know why it popped up like this. I can't answer. Lauren, I don't know why this popped up like this. I can't get back to the screen. But anyway, if you can, I don't have control over this question, but it's a good one. Concerning the zoning mix, I heard you mentioned light industrial in the mix. What would that include? That's a great question because light industrial is not what you think of. So Andrew, I'll let you explain what light industrial is when you use that term.
Sure thing, Andrew. In this regard, and light industrial can obviously be misconstrued, and in this regard, we're really looking at flex spaces that look quasi office, but might have some light testing kind of R&D type uses in the back. So it's not your typical office building like you see in the tech park right now, but it's a varied employment use where you can have a variety of activities inside, but there's no smells or heavy noises or anything that you typically see in a light industrial park, but more of a flexible nature where there's a variety of activities that can be done inside. And if you think about craft breweries, I think that's the perfect example where craft breweries don't locate inside typical use. They're usually in some type of flex light industrial zoning class. So we want to make sure that we're getting the appropriate types of uses. And as Andrew had stated, is we're not going to be coming up with the zoning guidelines for this, but making more policy recommendations for this. And it's just important to note that we have to think about these really interesting types of uses, maybe even off, Emory Healthcare, if they want to, create some type of partnership for like research and development with another firm, and that ends up being in the town center, that'd be probably in some type of flex use as well, where they're doing research and development and testing, and that could be around life sciences or technology or biopharmaceuticals or the like. So a lot of interesting stuff that we can incorporate there, but it would still fit the form and function of the town center plan.
I'm going to ask Lauren, who's running. There's a couple other questions. Oh, thank you. Okay. So in terms of the acreage of the town center, I'm speaking specifically to the open space we presented in front of City Hall that extends 3 blocks from City Hall back to Lakefield Drive. It's about 2.8 acres. It does not include the buildings and kind of the private development space. It includes the public realm itself, just the park space. So yeah, I mean, I think this is a fair question, and I think one thing I will say is this is a first draft. What we're showing is development potential in and around based on if you were to redevelop sites. It doesn't mean it's all going to look exactly the same way. But the blocks shown can be developed that way from a physical standpoint. And over time, we're going to look at how we can working continually with MXD and the market analysis and begin kind of, again, better prioritizing and doing this. And so we want to be thinking about that. Part of what you're experiencing and what we're showing people this evening is, look, we're trying to test a lot of ideas in real time and see what happens, but it's a first stop. It's a first step. And so people can begin seeing the iterative process that needs to take place over time to get to the final plan. So it's going to change. What we presented this evening will probably change somewhat. More ideas will come to the table. We'll better test the ideas. The goal is to say, this is where we're going and this is what it could look like. It kind of goes also to the idea of the next comment was this comment down here, which I think is a good one. The proposed zoning mix, absolutely. A lot of office. There's more office space that needs to be in there. I mean, those it was, again, we almost hesitated not to put color on it because we don't, it's not a finished concept. But you're absolutely right. Wellness space, multi-use outdoors. There's a lot of outdoor space already there. We're trying to figure out how to introduce more activities of interest and spread out those key destinations. But that's going to change over time. So it's a large space. Our goal is to illustrate, the kind of what would it look like in a new format, new arrangement. It will change though. So I will promise that it will change over time, but it's a first start. So don't get locked in. First off, the zoning mix, it's not a zone. We're not showing zoning. We're showing land use and how that's being done. And the mixes that will take place may look different. Will definitely probably look different over time as it gets built out. But
Andrew, if I could add real quick.
yeah.
So I was just going to say, I know there's some comments about sort of what we've shown as conceptually what, again, land uses, like you mentioned, may be possible. The other thing that I want to point out, because I see some other comments related to sort of density and how other sort of industries may react, be it developers, property owners, residents, what have you. I hope that everyone participating tonight understands that, again, as Andrew mentioned, this is a reiteration that we continue to go through multiple cycles of sort of design. The other thing is ultimately at the end of the day, and I think you mentioned this in the beginning of the presentation, is this is not a regulatory tool by any means. This is more of a vision, it's a guide, it's a tool that sort of best represents the vision looking towards the future within a 20-year time span. In addition to that, the realistic components would really come through once we complete the conceptual parts and then build into or move towards the actual regulatory portions, which we mentioned is the addition to the zoning ordinance that would really dictate how that actual development would take place. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Yeah, thank you, Ben. I appreciate that. It's a start. This is a starting point that everyone's seeing, and we're going to build on that and make it a tool that the city can use. So yeah, the timeline I showed at the beginning of the project to finish the master plan component will be mid to end of summer, and then when will the plans be implemented and completed? When we talk about the plans, if you're talking about what you're seeing and build out over time, 20 years. I mean, it's going to take a long time to build these ideas out. Our goal is to look at, what this might look like, what's the general approach phased and prioritized over time. But again, this is private land and private owners, much of it. So they will determine, if they want to come in and redevelop sites, they will have their own timelines as well. Our goal is to provide the framework when they do that, what it might look like and how we will organize that and organize the development. So, but again, for the master plan component, it's going to happen, this year and be completed and hopefully adopted by the city council in the summer. But that's going to generate another series of initiatives and different projects over time. So,
and Andrew, if I could, sorry, just to add, I was going to say that as we continue to go through this process, and again, taking in the input from the public, the Town Center Advisory Committee, as well as the private property owners that are within the tech park area that would also be impacted by this project, we're going to continue to have those discussions and bring people in for feedback. And as we even internally discuss this again through the project team, we hope to provide somewhat of a more clear, iterated concept plan to the public closer towards the end of May.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and that's on the next step comment I will share. But you're absolutely right, Ben. I mean, the plan for parking is that it needs to be incorporated into any future redevelopment. And so that's always a consideration. Right now, the parking really doesn't work. I mean, it's a massive amount of parking, but it's also inefficiently used. So as we were laying out and talking about building footprints, you're going to see a transition to a different kind of parking pursuit. There will still be places. Again, this is 20-year build out. So parking is going to look totally different 20 years from now than it will today. We don't know about the advanced technologies and things that are coming, so it'll look radically different. But you have to assume there's going to be more diversity of parking opportunities. you're still going to have places that remain undeveloped and will have surface parking. Our hope is that they will have shared use agreements with other parcels and adjoining their neighbors so that you can make more flexible use out of existing parking. You'll have smaller commercial spaces that you can park behind the buildings. You'll have opportunities for a lot of these buildings, especially the taller structures, will have deck parking wrapped with residential and retail and commercial, which is a pretty standard development pattern that you see. So you're going to see a lot of these different patterns, not to mention the on-street parking that doesn't exist right now. So another way to use kind of enhance the public realm. So all those are strategies that would have to be implemented over time as a developer would come in and redevelop the site. Again, we're not going to design every single location for every single parking spot. What we will tell you though is what we're drawing represents similar scales that include, for instance, deck parking and things of that nature. So it's going to be a long-term conversation as these places get built out. There's also parking ratios to be considered as well. Those parking ratios may change over time to make it more efficient for developers to redevelop spaces and better use their parking spaces. So it is absolutely an issue. We definitely understand that. But our goal is to make it definitely an area for also more connected. So you don't have to get in your car if you don't need to. You understand it's still going to be an issue. But now our hope is if you're, say, working at Alcon, maybe 10 years from now, you're now getting on a multi-use greenway trail and walking to lunch to eat and come back, reducing that travel time, reducing that car on the road, driving over to Medlock, up to McGinnis Ferry to eat somewhere because they don't have any place to eat nearby. So our hope is that we're making it more walkable, so reducing some of those car trips, and it also impacts the parking as well. Totally understand parking is a major issue, but that's part and parcel of how you develop the property over time as the city works with the developers. I will answer this question and say yes. Absolutely a need for it, and it'll kind of depend upon what other opportunities come about. We talked a little bit about, State Farm is one example of a place you could do that because it has a campus setting, but there's other places in and around many different locations that could be incubation spaces, small startup spaces as well. So they take a lot of different forms and locations. So don't think for a moment that what we drew up and the colors we put to the plan represent exactly that's the only place to do that. It could be anywhere in there. I mean, there's a lot of opportunity for that. Absolutely. Again, I will say about the families and details, the goal of any successful park design, when you're doing that, if you're thinking about the linear parking any place else, that's kind of that next level of detailed design, bringing people together and looking at an inclusive design space. What we're presenting is still fairly high level, but we're saying these are great spaces you could do X, Y, and Z in. Here are some things you need to research and consider more fully. We know what healthy, active, successful outdoor spaces look like, and we want to be able to say, this is a community for all ages. So even if you're 80 years old, you can use a space. If you're with your family and you're 5 or 6 years old, you want to plan on parking in a space, it's safe for you as well. So we certainly believe that. And that's certainly part of any good successful design project as you dive into more and more detail. That won't be part of this plan as much detail as you would like to see in those plans that'll come in the future dates. Absolutely true. No developers selected for the project. This is privately owned land. This is a vision to talk about the future healthy mix of uses and form and framework of the future town center. So there is no developer. Will there be one or more? So several developers? Who knows? Time will tell. Our goal is to establish a framework. So if developers come in, there is a plan in place that the city can communicate to those developers and create those partnerships. The goal always to create great public-private partnerships with those. I say public-private, both really just informally, like they know one another and create great relationships so that you're getting the best development possible. Will that be a public process? I don't know. I can't speak to that. I don't know if Ben or Chris Can want to speak to that at all, but this really isn't linked to any particular developer or developer process at this time. Sorry about the anonymous commentary. Sorry about that. Allows people to kind of give more input. I think yeah, I mean, I think there's devil in the details. I think these both comments here are correct in that things change over time, and that it's going to be flexible and designed specifically. I will say that to this kind of final comment about delivery zones and parking and things like that, what we try to do with that kind of framing plan is to say, you know, what we drew can happen. The devil's in the details. The master plan isn't going to go into every single detail about where a delivery section is going to be, what needs to happen. What it is trying to do is establish a framework that is successful over time. Think about that, and that any future zoning, any future policies that come out of that, take those into account or proactively thinking about that. But you're right, it's high level, but we want to be thoughtful and to the degree realistic. And so that's why we did that framing plan, that what we showed was if that were on a map can actually take place. It can be built. Should you choose to build it that way or want it that way. So we kind of, the axiometric around town center was there to illustrate that comment. And I guess we'll end with this one. I want to end with this one. I want to also thank the TAC members who participated throughout the entire week. Great feedback. Thank you for city staff for being so engaged. We appreciate that as well. And so it's really helpful to provide that information, you know, be so interactive. We have more to come. I'm going to go to the next slide real quickly and talk about next steps. Someone asked about that. So part of Memorial Day, we're going to come back out and have another meeting. As Ben mentioned, we're going to engage the public again before Memorial Day with our refinements. There's a couple different things you can do. You gave a lot of great feedback tonight. The second one is you can always continue to go to JC Town Center for project updates. And then we'll be working with the city staff to continue to provide information out there. And also JC Town Center at johnscreekga.gov is an email that if you have other additional comments or thoughts, you can email those in. Those are certainly being any comments being sent to that email will come to city staff and sent to us, and we'll take those in. And that email is also on the project website. So again, I just want to thank everybody for their participation. We appreciate all your input. We appreciate all the time. We've enjoyed this. It's been a very fun process, and we're looking together to continue refining things and move ahead. So without further ado, I'm going to let you all go back to your families and to your meals, and to hopefully kick the weekend off well on a Friday. And hopefully you guys can get out to the weekend and enjoy the outside. It's going to be a great weekend. So thank you all so much.